Hello, everybody, and welcome to the classic Twilight Zone review series. This is a review for the pilot episode, Where is Everybody? And I have to say, if you are a classic old school fan, or you're a new fan that just wants to hear what someone else has to say about the series, you've come to the right place. Very quickly, I just want to say that I do plan on reviewing each and every episode of the show, yes, all 5 seasons. Okay, so the pilot episode is called Where is Everybody? And it was written by Rod Serling, who's also the creator of the show, and it stars Earl Holliman as a man who finds himself in a strange town. The only problem is he soon discovers he's there all alone. Now, you have to keep in mind that this pilot episode, although very basic on the surface in nature, was the episode that had to sell the show to the network. So if this episode would not have been successful or well liked, the Twilight Zone never would have existed, arguably. So that's some very important thing to consider when viewing this episode. And also, these reviews will contain spoilers. Just wanted to get that out of the way. So if you've never seen them, you have been warned ahead of time. And the question really is, how good is this episode? Obviously, it was good enough to get the show on the air, but how good is it really? Well, fortunately, it's very good. And it features some excellent cinematography and a very good performance from Earl Holliman. But I'm going to break down a couple of the key points of the episode, and you're going to see just why it's as effective as it is. The episode starts off with the man. His name is Mike, and he basically goes into a diner and wants breakfast, but there's nobody there. Now, one thing I want to bring up before I go any further is, it may seem a little odd that the character talks out loud to the audience. I guess you could take it as he's talking to himself, but I'm not sure back in this time if there was really another way to do this other than to have him talk out loud, and I got used to it more and more as the episode went on. So, I've seen these episodes before. It didn't really bother me, this technique. And, I'm not sure there was really a better way to do this to know what's going on with the character, even though it doesn't totally make sense for him to be talking out loud to nobody through the whole episode. But with that out of the way, I just accepted it for what it was. So he's in this diner ordering breakfast and nobody's there. And he's wondering what's going on. Then he starts talking. He goes outside, starts talking to a woman. He thinks it's a woman in a car, but it's really a mannequin. And the next thing he does is go inside a phone booth and try and dial the operator to figure out what's going on. And you hear a woman operator's voice, and she just keeps saying that the number doesn't exist. So all these weird things are happening, and you, the audience, is also wondering what's going on at the same time. And then he starts to think maybe he's dreaming, and that's really the only conclusion we can come to at this point. And he also says he feels like he's being watched. So he goes back into some other places. He finds a cigar that looks like it's been smoked. He finds running water, and it's weird because all these things are actually working, but nobody but him is there. So at this point, he goes outside, getting more and more paranoid, and yells, "Where is everybody?" The classic quote of the episode. So that's pretty much the halfway point of the episode. When it comes back, he's eating and talking to himself in the mirror and mentioning that he could be dreaming again. And there's also a book in the book rack saying "Last Men on Earth," which fits in very nicely. These are the kind of little details that they would put in the Twilight Zone that really added to the episode. And then, as he's getting more and more paranoid, he realizes that he was in the Air Force after seeing something that gives that away. And he basically then sees a movie projector screen with an airplane on it, and the projector's running, and again, nobody's running it. So he really freaks out, and he runs into glass, and it shatters. And from there, he's just laying there, and then we cut away to the big revelation that the whole thing is actually in his mind because he is on a simulated trip into space. I believe it's the moon specifically. And, it turns out that the whole thing was simulated as a test to see how someone would do in isolation by themselves if they were away from civilization for a long period of time by themselves. And then Rod Serling gives his closing narration. And really, it's a story a lot about how humans need other humans to survive and how total isolation can drive you crazy. Some interesting thoughts on this episode. It's interesting that Twilight Zone is known as being really a fantasy science fiction show. I personally consider it a lot more fantasy. There are bits here and there of science fiction, some good science fiction, some not so good, but we'll get to that in later episodes. But the thing that's really interesting is there really is no fantasy element to this episode. This is actually something that could happen. And, I don't really think this is that outdated, though. I mean, people are doing things with simulation now, and that way it's kind of current. But when I first saw this episode some years ago, I was new to Twilight Zone, and I was thinking, where's the fantasy? And this kind of bothered me. But looking at it today and knowing what's coming in the future, and understanding that it was a pilot episode and to sell it to the networks, something that plausibly could have happened, was probably a better way to go. I really think the episode is very effective, and that aspect of the episode doesn't really bother me anymore. So my overall rating on this episode, my ratings will always go from 1 to 5. I'm going to give this episode a 4 out of 5. I think it's very good. It's not a perfect episode. The talking out loud, I'm not sure. I think there might have been a better way to get around that. Back then, I'm not sure. And the replay value isn't great. Once you've seen this episode once or twice, and it loses the mystery and suspense because it's mostly a one-man show until the last 5 minutes or so. It doesn't have great replay value, but as a pilot, it's successful. It sold the show, and the ending of the episode is effective. So 4 out of 5 for this episode, and I think that's a fair rating. And if you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe below, and I will be doing more reviews very soon. So thanks for watching, and catch you later. Bye.